Hello and welcome. Maybe you've heard of the ORA Funky Cat. Maybe you've heard of the ORA Funky Cat GT. You've maybe even heard of the Ballet Cat. But today we bring you the newest cat, the fastest cat, the sportiest cat, the Lightning Cat. Let's get started. The proportions of the Lightning Cat are, let's face it, a bit awkward, but it is okay from certain angles and there are certain details that are nice. The front 3/4 angle that you're looking at right now is pretty good, especially because it shows off this very cute looking front end. It also highlights the sculpting that's going on here on the side of the car, which extends from the front wheel arch all the way back to encompass both doors. In fact, now that I think about it, the whole design reminds me of a first generation, what's it called? I can never remember what that car is called. Let me think about it. It's gonna come to me. It's gonna come to me. But no amount of detail can hide the fact that this thing is a humpback, squashed up looking little vehicle. Even the wheel design is kind of weird. I would describe it as being overly organic.
The Lightning Cat has some bulbous rear proportions, but that doesn't result in massive rear cargo space. I think they really missed something by not making this a liftback.
The interior of the Lightning Cat is surprisingly elegant. I like the fact that they didn't overcomplicate things. You have a simple dashboard that has a flowing center console here. You have a 12.3-inch instrument cluster and a 10.25-inch digital instrument cluster that's been divided into these 3 different binnacles. Very traditional look to that. The interior is trimmed in a lot of soft touch materials for this upper part, but the lower plastics are pretty cheap. That also includes the silver elements on the door. Those also don't feel particularly premium. It's also delightfully refreshing because this is the most physical buttons I've seen inside of a Chinese EV in quite some time. Everything is easy to operate and I feel like I am in heaven right now. Everything from the driving mode to the HVAC, the window switches, the buttons on the steering wheel, they all are physical as opposed to being smushed onto the center screen. But the screen does bring me around to what I think is the main issue with this car's interior, and that's a relative lack of features. The Lightning Cat starts at $27,000 US and goes all the way up to $39,000 US for this top spec trim level. I think that customers at that price point are expecting a lot more tech, especially when it comes to things like the screens. This 12.3-inch screen is large enough to be useful, but it's definitely smaller than I would consider the industry standard for this price point, and I think there's going to be some customers who feel like that's a lot of money for not a lot of toys. Rear seat comfort isn't particularly impressive in this car, starting with the fact that headroom is at a premium, legroom pretty decent, but this floor feels very high. That combined with the fact that the roof feels very low makes this thing feel like sitting in a bunker. I'm going to start by saying something completely out of character, and that's the fact that I think the Lightning Cat you want is actually the single front-mounted motor long-range version, not the performance that we're driving right now. Yes, the performance has exactly double the power, 300 kilowatts and 680 newton-meters of torque. The performance, therefore, is appreciably better, to say the least. The 0 to 100 kilometer per hour on the long range is, well, it doesn't even have an official number, but I guarantee you it's much slower than the 4.3 seconds of this performance.
But having a lot of power is only part of the equation if you're trying to make a fun-to-drive car. The chassis actually has to be set up to handle it, and the Lightning Cat's is not. The front suspension is McPherson strut instead of the double wishbone used by other cars at this price point, and the tuning is less than ideal.
This is one of the most softly sprung vehicles I have experienced in 2022, and I am including some SUVs in that comparison. It's almost fun to see how much you can get it to roll over when you throw it into a corner at speed. That sensation is only emphasized by the steering, which is both vague and very much overboosted. So to summarize, we have a lot of power combined with a very soft suspension and very vague steering. This is not a recipe for a fun-to-drive car.
Things don't improve much when you put it into Super Sport mode, which is activated by pushing the little red button on the steering wheel. Not only does it change the color of the gauge cluster and put the car in its sportiest settings, it's also accompanied by a sound that's, well, I'll just let you listen to it.
Just in case you forgot that ORA is a brand that targets female buyers, it also has a mode called Nüshun, which translates to goddess. Goddess mode goes the complete opposite direction of the Super Sport mode, making everything even softer and lower effort. You can pretty much drive this car with your pinky when it's in goddess mode. In all fairness, however, I would say the goddess mode is more in fitting with this car's particular character. You see, the Lightning Cat, contrary to what its name would suggest, is best suited for driving from point A to point B in style and comfort, not being driven in anger.
And if cruising is the goal, then the long range is still the right choice. It squeezes a CLTC range of 705 kilometers out of the same 83.5 kilowatt-hour battery pack as the Performance, which has a claimed range of 600 kilometers. All that while costing $35,000, over $4,000 less than a Performance. Base models are even cheaper, costing $27,000 and coming with a 64 kilowatt-hour pack rated for 555 kilometers of range.
All trim levels of the Lightning Cat come standard with adaptive cruise control. However, ORA's more advanced driver assistance system called ORA Pilot 3.0 is only available as an option, a $3,000 option, on certain trim levels, including the long range, but not including the Performance. So the Lightning Cat isn't much of a performer, even in its performance trim, and its interior technology is a little bit lacking. But it's still a cat, which means it can provide you with a healthy dose of fun and funky styling for your daily commute.